I'm Gemma Mojica, and I just want to give a shout out. I have to say, all of the work that I do is because I'm a part of an amazing team. All of the projects on my team, I work with great colleagues. I work with great graduate students. I work with great staff. And so I can't mention every single person's name, but I do want to acknowledge that all of the work I do is in collaboration with colleagues, software developers, lots of other people. And so all of this work that's been built by my team really is a team effort. And I want to give a shout out. Someone from my team is here. Maddie Grossman is here. So I just wanted to say, thanks, Maddie. I've seen you all day and I appreciate you, sticking it out through this afternoon session. So I think Samara gave a really good description of what some of the things I'm working in. All of our projects are really built on trying to build these foundations for data science and helping students one day become informed data citizens. So I want to just talk about some of the things that I think are really important around preparing teachers. And so I spend a lot of my time developing spaces and different types of spaces for teachers to have professional learning around data science. My background is a statistics educator. So while data science is a multidisciplinary field, I just want to acknowledge that a lot of the things that I talk about or the things that I see are very much through that lens of mathematics educator more broadly, but statistics educator very specifically. So I think that a lot of the things I've heard, for those of you that have been in the sessions earlier, a lot of these things around teacher training have already come up. And I think one of the really important things to keep in mind with teacher training is that for teachers, they hear these terms: data science, data literacy, data acumen, and they don't always know what these things mean or where these things fit in their curriculum. And we know that for teachers, they have curriculum standards, they have assessments that their students have to do well on. And so oftentimes when we have these new initiatives or we want to incorporate these new ways of thinking, it's really important for teachers to understand what these things are and where these things fit, right, into what they're already doing. So I think that that's one of the challenges oftentimes. If we ask professionals that work with data or educational experts or even policymakers, we all have different ideas about what is data science. Most of us agree it's multidisciplinary, right? But I think that that's one of the things we have to think about in terms of training for teachers. Another thing that's really important is the experiences that teachers need. Oftentimes, we know from literature that teachers are, if we just look at the stats education literature, they're often less confident to teach statistics than any other subjects related to math. They're more confident to teach calculus than statistics, and they often feel like they're underprepared. They haven't had experiences. So data science goes beyond what they've learned about statistics or even what they've learned about coding and computer science. And so teachers haven't had experiences around working with big data to solve problems. And so I think one of the things that is really key to teacher training is this idea that teachers themselves need experiences as learners working with big data. And I like to say bigger, and people on my team, we say bigger because big is relative, depending on whether we're working with middle school, teachers or high school teachers or introductory college. But it's this experience of working with bigger data, complex, messy data that might have missing values that are steeped in these real world contexts or real world phenomena where they're solving problems. And if you are envisioning working with data in this way, it's going to require use of technology tools. And sometimes these technology tools don't necessarily mean just our analysis tools, but they may be tools that we use for cleaning our data or collecting our data. So they need these experiences as learners themselves to understand, if they're going to provide these experiences for students, what this looks like. And so I think one of the key things that I've been thinking about a lot with the people on my team is thinking about what are the key practices and processes that data scientists or professionals that work with big data, what is it that they do in their practice? So we can't just look to my field of statistics education. We can't just look to computer science and what people do in that field. We need to think about what are these important skills and processes that are needed, right? And so then identifying what those are, then thinking about, well, what does this mean for developing these ways of thinking or these habits of mind and developing these skills in the K-12 classroom? And so I was talking about how I hated missing the last part of what Saul was talking about to get onto this call. But one of the things I think he was highlighting was this idea of, if you're a data scientist and you're working in your field, you're working around a problem. You have a problem that you're solving, right? And this is different than if we think to a mathematics classroom where, we're solving a mathematical problem. I mean, this problem hopefully is a real problem, right? Or it's related to an important issue. And so it's this idea of you're solving problems. You might be collecting data, or your data might already be gathered for you. So you're understanding this data. But we've heard also a lot today about how important the processing the data is, right? So teachers need to understand that processing data is this very important part of working with data, whether they're doing it themselves or whether they have students do it, but just the understandings of this is part of this process, or it's a skill that's used, and they may engage in it at some point, or students may, but then this idea that we're exploring and visualizing data, and then we've created these models, right? And then we're considering which model helps us answer or solve this problem that we've been thinking about. And then one of the other things I've heard throughout the day that's really important about identifying these processes and practices is this communication. So we've solved this problem with data by analyzing our data, visualizing our data, using our technology tools to help us with all of this. But now we need to communicate either a solution back or propose some kind of action, right? And so having teachers understand these are the things that data scientists do, and then not that we expect teachers to engage students in these types of activities every single time they work with data, but just giving students different opportunities to engage in these different processes. And so I see a question that's coming up that's, I think, somewhat related to this. So I'm going to just stop for a minute. The question's about facilitating data collections for teachers and schools, and for schools and teachers who don't have any idea how to leverage data science. So this is actually a point that's in my notes of something to bring up. So one of these things, so this is a really important point. So this is a tool that teachers need, right? So teachers need to understand technology tools that can help them. But I think that relying on industry, people that work with data, or relying on people like me, educators, we can do our part to help prepare data or collect data, and maybe even do some of this processing and cleaning of data for teachers, because it takes so much time as a professional to do that. I hear teachers all the time saying, I don't have time to go through this process and do this. Like, where can I get data? So I think that one of the really important things as we move forward is to really think about, how can we leverage industry? How can we leverage the work that's already being done, and to find data that's appropriate, and then help create tasks around this data so that students can engage in the kind of process that that we were just talking about. So the last thing I want to say, and then I want to leave room for other people to bring up ideas or other questions, is a lot of what I was hearing today was also about diverse and multiple voices. And so I think when I say, industry needs to work together, we need to work together as educators, policymakers, but we also need to make sure that teachers are brought into any of these things that we construct for teacher training or for use in the classroom. I think it's super important that teachers' needs are brought into this and their voices. It is so humbling for me when I create things. I get a data set, I create a task, I go and I try to teach it, and then it's so humbling to see, oh, that's how it went in the classroom, like thinking about what teachers deal with on a regular basis. And then the other thing that I just wanted, two other things real quick. One of the things I wanted to bring up that I heard throughout the day was this idea of recognizing teachers for developing skills around learning. So this idea of micro credentials, I don't know a lot about how to address the pay issues, but I do the work in terms of creating micro credentials and building resources for teachers so that they can show that they're learning around how to teach this. So I think that that's an important issue, giving teachers that recognition and allowing them to show that they have these credentials, that they've accomplished this, that they know something about teaching this. And then the last thing is just this idea of working or creating flexible spaces for teachers. There's no one-shot way that teacher training is going to help all teachers. We need lots of different kinds of training opportunities. So a lot of the spaces that I create with people on my team and my colleagues are these online spaces where teachers can come in, they can work at their own pace, but we do some other work where we work with PLTs around this. So for some teachers, they need some kind of blend of face-to-face and these spaces. So I'm going to leave it there, and I know we only have a couple of minutes for questions or comments.
Yes, if there are any additional questions before we move on to the breakout rooms, please put them into the chat. I see Chris shared what are some existing micro credentials. I'm not sure if you're aware of anything.
Well, I'm familiar because we've created a bunch. So I do know that Lindsay Henderson, and I'm not sure if I got her last name is right, she's been a part of the events today. In Utah, they have created data science micro-credentials for teachers. Digital Promises is a place where you could go. There may not be specific to data science. And then our team has developed micro-credentials in our Amplifying Statistics course that is a free on-demand course for teachers. And then we're also developing them in a platform that we're building with our partners at RTI. And so those will become available soon. If anybody wants to know more about those, feel free to just send me an email and I can get you there. Somebody that's heard of Amplifying. Yeah, that's the product of work of my colleague, Holly Lindley. And then I've done some work with her where we've taken some courses that were facilitated and now made them into on-demand courses. And in fact, we're getting ready, Maddie and I and a bunch of other people on our team, we're getting ready to do some training because we're going to open up micro-credentials to the public for free very soon. Yes, Holly was fabulous.
Thank you so much for sharing all that information, Gemma, and thank you everyone for participating.